History is often written by those things that we now so much take for granted, that we don't really even notice them. In 1825, when they put that steam engine on the rails on the Stockton and Darlington Railway, that steam engine, locomotion number 1, designed by George Stephenson in 1825, that engine could be put on the rails here at Netley and it would operate perfectly well. You could take that engine from 200 years ago, run it through the Channel Tunnel. You could even run it on the bullet train lines in Japan. So when you come to Netley Station for the first time, just look at the things around you, look at the tracks, think about a ticket, look at the timetable. Really, it's the 200th anniversary of all of those things that we take for granted that we're celebrating this year.
Netley as a village only grew up with the building of the Royal Victoria Hospital on the foreshore. Before that, this was all farmland belonging to the Chamberlain family. And Netley, as it was known then, is what we now know as Old Netley. Our history really only started here in the 1850s.
Had it not been for the hospital, Netley as a village probably wouldn't have existed. Until the hospital was built, there was very little here at Netley. You had the Abbey buildings, which were already, that was sort of the ruined Netley Abbey. Netley Castle, there were some farms, but that was it. And, this was just sort of common grazing ground and things that was being used, land owned by the Chamberlain family. The hospital was built at the sort of request of Queen Victoria. She commissioned the building of the hospital, and it was also at her instigation that the railway line was put in. And when the railway line was built that connected Southampton Docks and Netley Railway Station, they could then transfer the patients onto ambulance trains and bring them in that way. So from 1866, when that railway line opened, they could bring the patients in to Netley Station, pop them onto a horse-drawn ambulance and bring them round by road, just that last little bit to the main hospital building. And it was at the end of the 1880s that it was then extended to sort of Fareham, Portsmouth and beyond. And that sort of paved the way for really doing the hospital's branch line that opened in 1900. And that was always intended as its own little bit of the railway. So it came, say, from where the sidings are at Hound Road down and into a platform at the back of the hospital. There's a bit business sort of units there now and a bit called the sidings, and that tells you the sort of the historical link that it's got. And there was a sort of a platform there and a shelter that was used by Netley Hospital invalids, so people who were being taken out of the hospital to wait for trains that would take them back through to Southampton and so on. So that was that really important initial connection with the railway line that came through to Netley.
Me and my sister, we all passed the 11 plus. The nearest grammar school for girls was at Eastleigh, so we used to come to Netley. We'd be given a season ticket, so we didn't have to pay on the trains. And we went to St Denny's, we changed trains there, and then got another train up to Eastleigh, and then got out the station there, and then it was a good couple of mile walk to the school. Sometimes there were buses laid on, but quite often there weren't. So, that was in, I did that 1962 to 68.
My earliest memory of the railway is actually here in Netley, where I was born and bred, and we lived in a road, perhaps 100 yards from where we're sitting now. And on a cold, crisp winter's night, I can remember laying in bed, and in those days it was all diesel trains and they made a tremendous racket. And I could lay in bed and hear the trains going into and out of Netley Station. And I was absolutely fascinated by it. And then during the day, as soon as I was old enough to be allowed out on my bike, one of the favourite places I used to come to with my friend who lived across the road. So we'd come up here to the railway station. And it was great free entertainment if you like trains, because it just sort of was all laid on for you. The trains would come and depart, and then really exciting, the trains that didn't stop, the trains going to Cardiff or to Portsmouth, and they would rattle through at whatever miles an hour, which is really exciting when you're 8 years old. Just occasionally, I had to go on the train as well. You know, some very strong memories of that, in that if we went somewhere on the train, I can remember coming into the booking office, just out the door here, and the smell of the wooden floor, it smelled, especially if it was a wet day outside, but that didn't bother us, because if it was a wet, cold day, there was an electric heater in there that really chucked out some heat, so nice and warm and cozy, and I'd be just about able to see, you know, up onto the counter. And whoever I was with, whether it was my mum or my granddad, would say, you know, 1.5 returns to wherever. And all of the tickets were kept. They were pre-printed, but the bit that wasn't pre-printed was the price of the ticket and the date of it. So you'd have the ticket, it would be put into the machine, and it was a mechanical machine, and it used to whir and thump, and out it would come with today's date and the price that you paid for it. 1.5, I remember that. I often wondered what half was. Well, I was the half. One of the members of staff when I was a child here was Mr. Budd. Mr. Budd to me, Ray Budd if you're a grown-up. And I can remember that he was an older-looking gentleman, but he wore very distinctive, old-fashioned half-moon glasses. And one of the stories about him that I remember is that my grandmother used to come and stay with us. And we'd bring her from her home in Fareham. She'd come and stay with us for a few days. And then she'd have to go home, but she went home on the train. And she'd always arrive in the ticket office here, and Mr. Budd would get her ticket ready for her. Now, one day we moved house, and we moved to the other side of the railway line. And that meant that my grandmother arrived on the opposite platform, on the other side of the tracks here at Netley, and Mr. Budd saw her and wondered what was going on. Now, he knew that she didn't like going over the footbridge at Netley because she didn't like heights. So what he did was he prepared the ticket for her in the ticket office and took it out and went across the tracks with it, gave her the ticket and took the money, and came back over the tracks and back into the ticket office. And that's fantastic service. I don't think people would be allowed to do that nowadays, but there were footsteps down onto the tracks that the railway staff could use. In fact, I've just looked and I've noticed that those steps are still there if you go and look for them. So that's one of the memories that I have of great customer service from Mr. Budd 50 years ago.
Well, it was a steam railway when I came on it. Although we had the Hampshire diesel units operating most of our trains, there were steam trains running constantly. I have a tank train that used to go down to Hamble sidings, which still exists down there now. So the tank trains, empties came up in the morning, and you uncouple the brake van at the back, draw it forward, operate the points to set the train back into the siding, and then uncouple them, put the brakes on, and then take the engine back out, couple back onto the van and come up here to Netley. There was one nasty incident when the train caught fire. I think I joined the train originally down at Bursledon, and the guard said to me, "We've got a fire." Well, the old Hampshire diesel units were one of the only trains that had the engine inside the train and not underneath. And there was a gap underneath the engine, which a bit of debris used to catch. And this lot had caught fire. Well, we used the train fire extinguishers to try and put it out, but it didn't really succeed. Got the train, we got the people out of the carriage and moved them for safety's sake. And I was well aware that there was a contraption fitted in those trains that would put an inert gas in to put a fire out. But at the same time, the engine would shut down. So we were in danger of the train coming to a grinding halt in the middle of nowhere. And that would not be good. So we got the train up here to Netley, and the siding still existed here in those days. And fortunately, there was a shunter on the train. So I got him to operate the points, emptied all the people out of the train to the platform here, shunted the train back inside, and got the guy from the ticket office to phone the fire brigade.
I had this idea when I was young that as I was a railway enthusiast, if I worked on the railway, it could actually spoil my hobby, so I didn't do that. And then years later, I had to sort of stop work for a while, and my daughter got a job on the trains, and she sort of said, Dad, you know, there's jobs going that really suit you down to the ground, part-time in the ticket office. You'd love it. You love trains. So at her beckoning, I applied for it. And then I was very lucky to get offered this job here at Netley, which I did for 13 years. I was soon picked up from the vibe from Netley that it's, even though it's a big place now, it's still a village at its heart. And I got to know some of the villagers and particularly some of the parish councillors. And I was able to, and I found out about Community Rail. They were mostly over at the Romsey side of Southampton at the time. I managed to get to know people like Mark Miller and Nick Farthing and people like that. And I managed to persuade them and the councillors to extend their reach over to here, which they did about 2016, something like that. And we managed to get sort of various rooms in the station which had been disused for years, including this one, which was derelict when I heard. We got the windows unboarded and completely refurbished, but then the rest of the room is done by the volunteers, by the station volunteers. We've got a fantastic team of volunteers here, lovely people. And the brief we were given by South West Trains, as it was they didn't want this to be a bog standard railway waiting room. They wanted it to be something special. I think the volunteers, you know, these lovely leather chairs and things like that, you know, really done us proud, and the pictures around the walls and everything. And the customers absolutely loved it. The room inside was untouched since the 1970s and had only just been repainted by the look of it. That had been the ladies' waiting room, and it was boarded up. So they sent the handyman down with a battering ram and tools to get in. And we got the panel off, found a perfectly intact door and that. And then I remembered that in the ticket office there was an envelope marked old keys. So I went out, emptied it onto the platform. Handyman went through, picked one up, opened the door, perfect. So I got straight on to my manager and said, look, we've got a perfectly good door here. There's no reason whatsoever why that room needs to be boarded up. You know, it would be useful if we could get into it from time to time to make sure everything was all right. And he said, yeah, don't board it back up again. I said, I've got your authority for that. Yeah, absolutely, on my authority, tell them not to board it back up. And then, of course, as soon as the inspection was over, I was straight on to Mark Miller at Three Rivers Community Rail and saying, no, I think I may have a present for you. And Mark was then able to negotiate with South West Trains. We knew from Maureen Queen that the History Society, they'd been doing displays in one of the local shops, but that came to an end. So they were looking for new premises.
Yeah. I mean, we were so lucky. I mean, I was literally in the right place at the right time when they were thinking, oh, what can we do with it? You know, and it got offered to the History Society and we bit their hand off. I mean, it's wonderful. And we open up once a month on a Saturday morning, the last Saturday of the month, and people get off the train and pop in, you know, who wouldn't have dreamed of coming in here otherwise, but they're curious and they see what we've got, and then they go home and tell their families. And we get people come in from, you know, who are visiting relatives that used to live here and don't anymore, and so they come in and reminisce. And it's all down to Mark Miller and Three Rivers partnership that started this off, making use of redundant railway buildings. It had been empty when the station was chopped about a bit, and as you can see, it's only 2/3 of the size of what it was when it was the ladies' waiting room. I used to wait in here, in fact, when I went to school at Eastleigh in the 1960s. All the relics and things came out of people's lofts and garages, and every time someone dies now, we said, make sure you let us have anything. Things that they were going to throw away, are priceless to us. Not just for historical reasons, but for social reasons as well. It all tells a story, doesn't it?
So we've managed to put the two things together, and I think it was in 2016 we opened it up, had a tape cutting session. The Mayor of Eastleigh attended in full regalia. Maureen dressed up as Queen Victoria for the day, and Aunt Miller came along dressed as the Fat Controller. And we had a free bus service going down to the country park where the little steam railway was running. And there's a lovely video somewhere on YouTube of this little miniature train going around the park with the Fat Controller, Queen Victoria and the Mayor.
Well, that came about up in the chapel. I was a volunteer. I am a volunteer in the chapel, taking people up to the tower and giving them the history of the place. And it was some anniversary. It's probably about the anniversary of World War One, the end of World War One, perhaps something like that. And they decided to have some events up in the park. And we thought it'd be good to have Queen Victoria. And where my surname is Queen, they said I had the job. So I literally got somebody to make me a costume. And from then on, I've been Her Madge or Queen Vic, depending who I'm talking to.
Well, it's a lovely station, great community spirit. Upstairs we've got Express Yourself costume hire, an absolute Aladdin's cave of fancy dress stuff. That was the old station master's house. The station master back in the day would have lived over the job, so he could be straight down here if there were problems. And it was out of use for a few years, and then Express Yourself got a lease on the upstairs, and they moved in. It was Christmas. We have a mince pie and mulled wine evening. We usually have the Netley ukulele players set up in the booking hall, and they strum away for the evening, and we have the mince pie and mulled wine. Maureen, Ted and the crew open up the history room so people can go in there and learn a bit about it. And of course, it's another thing, it keeps the station alive, particularly out of hours. Otherwise, the vandalism sets in and you do have problems.
The railway station, I've always thought, is one of the key places in the community. It's like the local pub, it's like the local shop, it's like the local church. It's somewhere that really is, a cornerstone of the community.
What is the need for, ticket rooms and waiting rooms when the digital age is upon us?
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, with that, it's all very well until things start going wrong. If the indicator board comes up, delayed, cancelled, people want to be able to talk to somebody. And so, I would see something happening and then I would find out why, and then I would tell the customers. One of the things I did before the idea of customer ambassadors came out, which was, you did as much of your work outside of the office as you did in it. If there were no trains running, I took the decision that, there's no point selling tickets for trains that aren't coming. So I would just close up the window and I would walk outside and just start talking to people, saying, very sorry, we don't know when the next train's going to be. I'm trying to organise taxis for people, and I do all that sort of stuff. So, you're there as a reassurance to customers and help them as best as you can. And the other thing is, although you can buy stuff online, there's great systems and things like that. The ticket machines are very good. The vending machines outside are very good. Sometimes people just want to talk to somebody about what the best option for them is.
I think we will see our railway system improve beyond all recognition. By the time I retired, we did have mobile phones. And initially we had pagers. And from what I can remember from the company that ran the pagers, is they reckon that British Railways used more time on pagers than anybody else in Europe. The beauty of it was, if you've got 2,000 staff equipped with a pager and something's gone wrong with the train, you can tell them all at the same time. Because you can send a message out on the pager to say what's happened. And that was useful, because all too often communicating one small piece of information about a broken down train, say, to everybody is difficult. There were times in the past with no communication whatsoever, and you didn't have the kind of equipment that you've got on stations now, where we've got telephones out there that you can pick up. You could be, I can remember being at a station when the train had broken down somewhere, and I had no means of communication to find out what had happened. And I stood on that station for an hour and a half without the faintest idea of what was going on. It was non-existent. I just had to wait till the train eventually arrived.
It's a site that we've got here with an amazing, fascinating history that takes us through some of the really crucial parts of British history. You know, sort of the height of the Victorian Empire and the sort of the ending of that, the First World War, the Second World War. I think there's some really important parts of British history that are here at Netley, and I think we're really lucky to have that. And I would encourage as many people as possible to come and get involved and find out more about that story.
The young people, they're our future customers. If we can take a group of kids, some of whom may never have actually been on a train before, and take them out, teach them a little bit, teach them about safety, you know, I'd have them go away thinking, well, actually, trains are quite cool, aren't they? And then I'll say to mum and dad, can we go by train somewhere for a change? You know, do we have to go everywhere in the car? You're winning over the next generation of customers for the railway, you know.
And I think it's a bit like mariners get in love with the sea. The same thing happens with railwaymen. Once you've got it in your blood, you're a railwayman. It's a different business, it's a different organisation. There's nothing quite like it. And there still isn't today.